Hi, it's great to be here, and actually it was exciting to see that earlier there was a request, a demand for more social scientists in this field, so that's one of the few times I've ever actually heard that, so it's great to hear. But I want to talk a bit today about the growing nexus between cybersecurity and privacy, and I've had my foot in both areas, background in academia and political institutions, also worked in the DoD, so I've been meandering between those two fields for quite some time. And I'm seeing a lot of potential looking at this nexus where cybersecurity and privacy do overlap and where we can help spark a lot of innovation. And so just for a little bit of background, if you look at, really since about 2014, every annual retrospective talks about the year of the breach and just kept getting worse. Every year, oh, now it's the year of the breach, now it's the year of the breach. And I kind of point to 2014 because that was the year of the Sony attack, and that really helped shift the public mindset towards cybersecurity and growing awareness in that area. And a lot of it focused on the wiper malware and the destruction that happened. But there also was sort of the Hollywood access aspect of it with the emails that were dumped. And there was huge infringements on privacy that occurred during that. But when we look back at it, it really is more of a security issue that we tend to be dealing with. And so from that point on, that was kind of par for the course. Each year was focusing on all these data breaches that started to occur, and they were placed more so in a cybersecurity framework versus a privacy issue. But that changed last year. And so last year, there was a growing push for, this is now the year of privacy, where privacy started to dominate the public conscious. And that's really an important thing, because once the public mindset starts to shift in these areas, that's where a lot of the incentive structures start to switch, both for the government and for the companies. And so part of the reason why I see last year is some of the key aspects that led to this shift. Cambridge Analytica. First one, that drumbeat of high-profile breaches continued. It really wasn't anything out of the norm. It was just more of the same. And you look at Equifax after, towards the end of 2017, the Marriott breach, which initially was going to be about 500 million. It was unencrypted passport numbers, whole sorts of different privacy infringements coming from that. Then it went down to maybe 400 million, and so everyone's like, oh, that's not so bad then. And that's sort of the baseline that we're at now as a society. But the fact that continued, along with the Cambridge Analytica, which actually led a lot of businesses in the US to start to realize that what's happening abroad does not necessarily stay abroad when it comes to privacy and security regulations. And I'll talk a little bit about that down the road. And so it really was, those three aspects that led to this shift in public mindset in the United States, at least, in favor of some sort of privacy regulation that has security components to it as well. And so part of it was a distrust for what tech companies were doing with data, and part of it was unhappiness with that the government just simply wasn't doing quite enough to help protect data, help protect privacy. And it got to the point where, at least in one poll, privacy was ranked as the #1 societal issue for people now. And so that's been a big shift in mindset, and again, that's really important. But what's also equally important is that among the public mindset, they don't. The Marriott breach, which so far has been connected to Chinese hackers, and then you've got Cambridge Analytica, which was misuse of data and unauthorized or nebulously written consent as far as data sharing. For the public opinion, at the end of the day, that's unauthorized data access. They're not really differentiating between the two, because at the end of the day, it's their data that's out there, and that's really what they care about, and that's completely understandable. But for us in the professions, cybersecurity incident, one's more of a privacy incident. And so having that separation, I think, has prevented us from a lot of innovations going on the tech side, on the policy front, and on the legal front. And so if we can start focusing on that nexus where privacy and security overlap, I think we can really spark a lot of interesting things to go on. And we're starting to see this, and the shift is already starting to be underway. And so it's an exciting time to be in this area. And just to take a quick step back, for the security community and where security is generally tend to be viewed, has tended to be more the hacking community. It tends to focus on the technical solutions in these areas. And it's basically what technologies can implement some of the privacy and security solutions. Then also had some of the more of the offense component as well, obviously from the hacking community. Then on the privacy side, it tends to be the legal and advocacy communities that really have more of the ethical and the normative focus. And so it's kind of this two-step basis that we do in the United States, where you've got the privacy community helps set some of the laws and frameworks, and the security community can help implement some of them for the defenses. And so we've had this two-step process That in many ways, though, hasn't really worked out terribly well, and you create this false dichotomy in some areas where you think you can either have security or privacy and not both, and we've heard that a fair amount, and of course there's a tension there that I'll get to. But also because we have that, and because of the growing unauthorized data access, however it happens, it's basically led to the mindset where in the security community, it's basically the mindset is assume breach, so that's pretty defeatist. And then privacy, we hear a lot more is that privacy is dead. My data is already out there, so what's it matter anyway? And so it's really, it's almost where we went from the tech community that's so optimistic and thinking that sort of this tech utopian, we've swung the pendulum all the way to more of a tech dystopian where, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. We might as well just throw our hands and give up, which we should not do, and I'll get into that. And to be sure, and I think part of the areas where we really can move beyond that is by focusing on the security and privacy overlap in these certain areas. But to make sure that we don't swing too far, obviously in the security community, there still is going to be a lot of other areas, and that's going to be anything from the critical infrastructure, how to deal with DDoS attacks and cyber vandalism. And then privacy community still definitely should be focusing on the aspects of opting in and consent and right to access and right to be forgotten, all those other aspects. But there's really still this crux there where the two can overlap, where I think there's just a lot of useful innovation that can go on. And if you think about it, so many of the big data breaches over time, from OPM, Anthem, TJ Maxx, Marriott, the list can just go on and on. Those were privacy infringing data breaches, many times by nation states, sometimes by criminal actors or by mercenaries. And so that's why if we can bring these together and really start to focus on where the privacy benefits of some of these security defenses can come in, I think there's a lot of potential in that area. And to take it even a step further, in the panel before we talked about, actually it was a good segue in, when we think we only can have security or privacy and not both, we get instances where we have two-factor authentication for security, but then those phone numbers are then used for targeting and other kinds of tracking, right? And so when you have that mindset that you can't have both, those are the kind of solutions that come up, and those are not the solutions I think either community are happy with. And so we need to move along beyond that, switch that mindset and really get more to that security by design and privacy by design and see if we can get both. Which again is aspirational, but if we don't have those aspirations, we're going to be left in an area where other people are going to be writing the rules that really don't care about privacy or security. And so to give you, in the short time, just a couple of ideas of some of the benefits that can come about, both by focusing on both the security and the privacy, and especially in the area of unauthorized data access. Cisco did a recent study of GDPR compliant companies. And so what they found is that those companies that were compliant had fewer data breaches. So that's a win for security. And not only was it fewer data breaches, when they did actually have a breach occur, fewer records were stolen, it cost less money, and the system downtime was lower. And so there were enormous security benefits for those companies that were GDPR compliant. And so these are the kind of things where we're going to think about that there actually can be a nice marriage of the two, and that there are these security enhancing benefits of GDPR. And we heard again earlier on from the GDPR talk, there was a data protection talk, and also can help enforce the privacy aspect as well. Also in an area where we have very limited resources for most companies in this area, by looking at security and privacy, we can have a better interaction between the chief privacy officers and the CISOs as they move along, and so they can then help pursue those strategies that are both focused on privacy and security, and help you implement those first, as opposed to sort of this patchwork that we keep seeing, given how much of a really complex landscape it is on the tech side. And then you get into that area of accountability, and we talked about this, I think, a little bit earlier too, as far as enforcement. That is so important. Again, as a social scientist, incentives matter, right? We want to switch the risk calculus. We want to incentivize companies to pursue the policies that are good for privacy and security. And so most accountability aspects come into fall under privacy regulations, right? So data breach notification laws, all those kind of things, where we have over 50 of them right now in the United States. Those accountability are aspects that fall under data privacy and breach notification are really important for security as well. And so that's just another area where we can use these privacy laws to impact the incentives for better cyber hygiene, which is one of the worst words in the security community that tends to just permeate for whatever reason. And it also helps create deterrence by denial, which is also a security aspect. So it's by hardening defenses through this data breach notification that can also help protect privacy and protect security at the same time. And then finally, getting into more of the international area, which is where I tend to focus a lot on. We talked about the GDPR, how it happens abroad there doesn't stay there. U.S. corporations are feeling it. But there's also a big trend globally for various international cybersecurity legislation, and what falls under that for those countries, again, where it's context sensitive, is a lot of the data protection and privacy laws are following underneath the cybersecurity legislation. And in many of these cases, especially under the authoritarian regimes, they're not actually privacy protecting. They're ostensibly for data protection. At the end of the day, it's for better access to that data by governments. And so all the data storage requirements and data access requirements are starting to pop up, and this cybersecurity legislation has enormous privacy implications. And so it'd be really useful to bring the privacy community into those kind of discussions that are going on globally, and we're seeing that happen. Another good example is Australia's encryption law to weaken encryption, right? And one of the key statements from that was basically one of the opponents to it said, what happens in Australia is going to ricochet across the globe. And we're seeing that as well as far as additional discussions, especially among authoritarian regimes, justifying their ability to, or their desire to break encryption based on what Australia is doing. And India is considering something similar with regard to trying to trace back WhatsApp. And so all these, this is where you see the security and privacy greatly overlapping. And just for one more quick, concrete example in the U.S., where they overlap, but not in a data authorization way, is the currently proposed IoT bill. And so Internet of Things very much is a big attack vector on the cybersecurity front. You have the Mirai bot from 2016, impacted hundreds of thousands of machines, brought down some companies and parts of the internet. And then just a year later, the Bricker bot was tens of millions of machines. And so IoT is a big, big attack vector that's going on. But we also know in the privacy space that there's a lot of ways that personal assistants, webcams, so forth, can be used for surveillance. And so a recent bill put forth in the Senate, led by Senator Warner, and then by Representatives Kelly and Hurd in the House, is basically it's privacy-preserving legislation that's focusing on creating those data protections in the IoT space. And so it's a bill that balances the security and the privacy and has really interesting implications if it moves forward. And so that's kind of the area that I hopefully for you to leave here, there's so many different ways and benefits for bringing together the security and privacy, that nexus, and focusing on it. There's not a complete overlap, and I do see some places where they say they're converging. I think there's going to be areas that are going to still stay separate, but in those areas where there is convergence, there's just so much opportunity that we need to move beyond sort of the false dichotomy and aspire for a world where we have both. And while it is absolutely aspirational, again, if we fail to aspire to the world we want, others are going to shape it in a way that limits innovation, it's defeatist, it's unimaginative, and I think we can do much better than that. And so again, if we allow those who lack those core beliefs for privacy and security as a fundamental right, they're going to be winning, and that's actually what we're seeing a bit globally, absent U.S. leadership in this area. And so instead of acquiescing that privacy is dead and that security is lost, I think we can all aspire for the world where we have both and can get a lot done by focusing at that nexus. So thank you.